So I'll officially start the podcast then.
Okay.
So Archana, welcome to the In the Know podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you today in person in our studio.
Very exciting.
I know you've been to Leeds before, but not for a long time. So hopefully the people are going to treat you very well.
100%.
I guess we are going to be talking about leadership today. So we've had previous conversations about that. It's a topic that I'm very interested in because it's where my business is certainly challenging me, where I'm going with leadership and how I create the vision and get people to come with me and step into the light, as I say. So I'm really looking forward to this. But I'm also conscious that people don't know you and your background. So a good starting point is probably to find out a bit more about you and your early life as well, and your childhood, because that's an interesting story, because I've watched your videos, of which are on YouTube quite a lot, which is good, and we'll leave some links as well. But maybe you can just give me that life story then, the early childhood.
It's such an interesting question because every time I tell it, it's slightly different, and I think context really matters. So my childhood was one of, it was filled with a lot of support and love. I grew up in Switzerland. I was born there. My parents are Indian. They moved to Switzerland when my father got a job working for a large U.S. multinational in Geneva. And my sister and I were born there. It was I suppose it was a childhood of opposites. So there was a lot of difference was something I understood very early on. I don't know if I can put my finger on the exact moment, but I knew I was different to most of the kids in my class, in my school, in the apartment building that we lived in. And that created sort of a process of inquiry for me as a young person growing up in an environment where I looked different to everybody else. So what I mean by that is, at home, we spoke English. In school, I spoke French. At home, we ate Indian food with our hands. At school, we had a 3-course meal with silverware, knives, and forks. At home, it was all about spice. At school, it was all about, pasteurized cheeses and salad and all of the delicious things that come with Western cuisine. But for me, these opposites at the time were quite challenging because I had to it felt like I had to navigate two completely separate worlds. And so the way I dealt with that, and I say this looking back, is I just shape-shifted between the two. So when I was at home, I was completely Indian. And when I was in school, I tried to adapt and strove to be just like everybody else. So I became fluent in French. I started listening to the same music as my classmates. I dressed like they did. I just tried to blend in. That's my story. That's where it starts. It starts with a child who just basically wanted to belong and couldn't quite work out how to do that.
So when you look back to those days, do you look back with fondness and happiness if you were looking to conform all the time?
It depends on which day you ask me the question. I think I look back on the experience as an incredible learning opportunity. I don't think I would have ever learned French if I hadn't been living in Geneva. And that has opened doors and pathways for me in a way that probably I wouldn't have been able to access those opportunities if I didn't speak a different language, because it taught my brain to think in different ways. So from that perspective, I'm incredibly grateful. I think the part that I perhaps find more challenging is this idea of belonging versus fitting in. I think the two things are very different. And I think in the workplace, and we'll probably talk about this later, those two things exhibit themselves differently. Belonging is, I believe, truly feeling like you have a place, whereas fitting in is just becoming like everybody else. And that was the juxtaposition that I think my youth taught me. What's the difference and which one do I prefer? I'm not judging either one. Both are fine. For me, it was about belonging, finding my place.
Yeah.
Because without that, I felt something was missing. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was missing, but I knew something was not right. Something didn't feel balanced. I felt off kilter, slightly out of bounds, like I wasn't in the right place at the right time.
You always felt like that, did you?
As a child, yeah.
Did you? And did you ever talk to your mum and dad about it?
I don't think I had the words.
Yeah.
So I think they knew. interestingly. My parents were very tuned into it because I believe they themselves felt that. So for them, I spoke the language, so I could communicate. I could buy the the chocolate bar or whatever. They didn't speak French. So for them, it was even probably more stark in the sense that communication was also hard. I could communicate on a certain level, but it didn't mean I could truly belong.
Yeah.
So I think they knew.
Yeah.
I think they knew, but I'm not sure they had an answer for that. Their answer to me was always, education is your golden ticket. Focus on studies, focus on doing the best you can, and opportunities will present themselves. That was their answer to, I don't feel right, something's not right, or my rebellious phase as a teenager. It was always just head down, find your passion, find your thing, and focus on that.
No, it's good. I can understand that advice. It's quite parental, isn't it?
Yeah.
And tell me about this rebellious side then. What were you like when you went
I was
through
a pain,
this?
a complete pain in the butt. I did everything a teenager does. I pushed all the boundaries. I used to hitchhike to get into town. I used to take money from my mom's purse and not return it. I was a terrible kid.
Really? Right.
I was not a good kid.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was not a good kid. I never got a chance. I think she always
knew.
knew.
Did they know?
They knew.
All right.
But I don't know. I got lucky. I got very lucky. Things could have gone very differently for me because I was pushing so many boundaries. But they didn't for some reason. I always wonder why. I got lucky. So.
And you were at school in Switzerland until the age of?
Till I graduated. So
Yeah.
I finished school in Switzerland. In the middle, we moved for 3 years to Cairo in Egypt because of Dad's job. And then we moved back to Switzerland for my senior year in high school. And then I went to the U.S.
Hence the accent.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I was educated in American international schools, which is why the accent hasn't really gone anyway.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you went to university?
Yeah.
What did you study at university?
I studied language, actually.
Okay. What made you choose language?
At the time, I think I chose it because it was easy for me. I don't know why, but I had a knack for languages. It was just I absorbed them, I learned them, I enjoyed them. I love talking in different languages. I've been around them all my life, different Indian languages and then English, French and so on. So my parents really wanted me to study science. Being a good Indian daughter, that was the expectation. Business, law, medicine, those were your options.
There's the trio.
And I chose none of them. Yeah. I chose language.
That's that rebellious streak in you.
Is a little bit of that. A little bit of that. And then, just explored writing and speaking and the use of language and how much power it holds if you use it well. How it can be used to connect, but it can also be used to divide. It holds so much promise. I think language is such a key to so many of our ills. And so, I got 4 years. I got a blessing really, to study language for 4 years. And then went to do my master's in education because I wanted to teach. My mother was a teacher.
Yeah.
So I'd grown up around the sort of love of learning, love of teaching as a kid. And decided I wanted to help those who didn't fit in. I really wanted to be amongst youngsters who were trying to figure out who they were. So I got a chance to go to Teachers College at Columbia to study special needs and work with neurodiverse kids, and did that for a decade. And then after about 10 years of that, went back to business school and then fell into finance, as you do.
Yeah.
I had every intention of going back into the public sector because I had actually gone into the business program in order to build my management skills and administrative skills in the context of education. But because of the way I think business schools are structured, you end up being held, you get given all these opportunities to try new things out. And I thought, why not? I'm going to try finance and see where it leads. And then I ended up in wealth management as a result of that. So,
what made you go back to business school then? Because if you're working with children, that's fulfilling and neurodiverse.
Amazing.
What was the reason to go back? And
so my dad had always said an MBA is a really great degree regardless of what you do in life because it teaches you how to use your experience to have an impact. So at some point in your career, and I'm not saying when or how, you should think about doing it. And after about a decade in teaching, I faced a bit of a crossroad. The next step was either continue doing the classroom work and continue teaching or move into administration. And I had entered teaching to be with the kids, not to run a school or work with teachers, really. So I didn't really want to make that choice at that point, and I thought it was a natural progression to just kind of go back and do a bit of studies and clear my mind for a bit.
Why did you think you chose teaching in the first place? Because we were talking very early on about conforming and belonging, etc. I'm just interested to know what you thought teaching would give you.
It's such a good question. I don't know if I truly integrated how much I would learn by going back to school as a teacher. I think my school experience had been so sort of one-dimensional. I mentioned earlier that for my folks, they always used to say, the one thing we can give you is a good education. We won't be able to give you much else, but that is going to be your ticket to everything else that you do in life. So focus on that. And so I did. To a certain extent. I think they might argue with me that I did, but okay. From my perspective, I did.
You're doing well.
I did. But as a student, I didn't take I didn't make use of the opportunities that were afforded to me. I just thought education was about my studies, and that's what I focused on. And I think somewhere in me, I knew that I wanted to show kids what a true 360-degree education might look like. I wanted to give them a shot, but also give myself a second chance of what I could construct in the classroom, what kind of environment I could build, and how effectively we could learn together. I know it sounds cheesy, but that was kind of my vision for what I wanted to do by going to become a teacher.
Looking back at that stage of your life, what do you think you learnt most about yourself during that time?
I think the most important lesson I learned was that kids read through inauthentic humans. They just know when you're not being truthful about either who you are or what you're saying. I think they have this incredible knack and sort of sixth sense for figuring it out. They know your pain points. They know which buttons to push. They know. They just know.
There's a knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that innocence or something, perhaps the openness of mind that tells them that this person, I don't know, there's something about this person that isn't right, doesn't feel right. And I learned very, very quickly that as a teacher, you need the kids to believe in you and what you say. Otherwise, they can't learn. So inauthenticity just doesn't work in a classroom. It's a conversation killer, in my opinion.
And what were the age ranges of the children?
I started with very young kids, kindergarten, so I suppose reception-aged children, and then kind of gradually moved up. And when I left the school, I was working with senior school-aged children. So I taught the whole sort of range, and it was true of all of them. I found that my greatest opportunities for teaching and learning were in those moments where I connected with the students truly from who I really was, not who I thought I needed to be. So
that's good. So did you feel at home? Did you feel this was your true...
I found my place.
I was going to say you found your place and you were teaching.
I did. 100%.
Being authentic and real.
Yeah.
That's cool. You did that for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you went back, did your MBA.
Yeah.
And then decided to, you found your way into wealth management, didn't you?
Yeah,
so
I did.
How did that happen?
I got an internship between, the way it works in the States is between the first and second year of your business school degree, you have to do an internship. And I was lucky to get an internship at Citibank for that period in between the 2 years. They offered me a job. I moved to London. My family is here, so that worked out. And then from private banking, I sort of transitioned into hedge funds and then wealth management, and sort of it was a path. I kept moving around every year and a half to 2 years. I changed jobs. I think fundamentally, I found myself in the same cycle, not really sure where I fit in, not really sure whether I belong, not really sure if I have the skills, all of these questions and doubt and uncertainty. until I ended up about over 10 years ago now at the place I'm at now, Meridian Investments, which I feel like is the place where I belong. I work with a group of people who I've known for a very long time and who I knew from a prior job. And there's just an alignment of purpose and interest and what we're trying to do in the world. So it feels right. And hence I haven't moved since.
So tell me a bit more about that. What are they trying to do then? This alignment, you say. Tell me more about the vision of the business and where that's going, if you can.
So we have one overarching purpose, and that is to be the place where we go above and beyond to put heart and understanding back in investment management. And that is one line. Those are a bunch of words, but we live and breathe them every single day. We truly believe that investing can be used for good, that ultimately people are trusting us with their wealth. And if they're willing to trust us with that wealth, we have to take that responsibility exceedingly seriously. So we only do one thing, and we choose to do that one thing as well as we possibly can. And that is we seek to beat inflation over the long term for our clients. And we do that by investing in equities, cash, and bonds.
Yeah.
And our aim is just to protect and grow. We don't do anything else. We don't lend money. We don't offer banking services. There's nothing else. We just run money in that way. And it's a beautiful thing because everyone stays focused and everyone knows what they're working for.
Yeah.
So it's really clear and transparent. And I absolutely love that about it.
So you've been there 10 years.
Yep.
But you knew some of the people in the business beforehand. Is that why you joined them? Because
yes.
you knew them?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your role today? What do you do?
So I'm the COO. I am responsible for the operations and the technology focus of the business. What does that translate into? Solving problems, working with people, making sure we're as efficient and simple as we say we want to be. Making technology work for us, bringing people along on the journey.
Yeah, that's difficult. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
I need some advice.
No, I don't know if I can give you advice. I can tell you what we've done, but that's where it's at. It's trying to align people, process, and technology every chance we can.
Yeah.
In the best possible way for everybody who's in that sort of triangle.
And how big is the business?
So there are 75 of us. We run about a little over $8 billion in assets under management, and we are that's it. We're all together in London, and
stable, secure. It sounds like you give clients peace of mind as well.
We try.
You do something well rather than
we try to do one thing
everything
very, very well.
Yeah,
and we believe there's room for lots of people who can do things very, very well. Effectively, we're trying to grow the pie. That's the point. It's not about competing at all costs. And
it's quite interesting because within business, there's always the thirst to grow, to do different things, whereby, I can understand, and keeping to your core is really important, but there'd be other businesses that would look to grow that pie in different areas. So is that being a conscious decision to almost like stay in your lane? Let's just do this really well rather than do the lending, do the banking, whatever it may be, because we're good at this.
Yeah. I will try in the course of this conversation to stay away from judgment about what other people do, just because I think that's one of the rabbit holes we tend to find ourselves in a lot in today's world. I don't know enough about other businesses and how they choose to grow. One of the things that I think is so special about Meridian is that we have always said that it is not about growth for growth's sake. It is about sustainable, resilient, lasting growth for our clients. So the people we care most about are the people on the team and the clients we already serve. That is the fundamental philosophy and premise, in our view, for doing things well. What that looks like to us is that, for example, we don't have sales targets. We don't have a sales team. We don't actively business develop. Those things are not aligned with who we are. We believe that we will get business if we do what we do well.
Yeah.
And so the majority of our new business comes through referrals. That's just how we've built.
The best business. It's the best business.
We
to
think
get.
so.
It is. It
we
really
think
is.
so. But also, I notice in my peers and other companies, I notice this kind of the pace, the sort of running to stand still feeling can exacerbate those feelings that I'm sure we'll talk about of burnout and exhaustion and anxiety. I think the understanding that at our core in Meridian, we believe that what we do, we need to do really, really well, because ultimately that is what we are about. It settles that anxiety a little bit. It makes us more centered, and it always brings us back to our focus. And we've been built that way intentionally. When the founders set the business up, that is what they wanted to do. Take care of existing clients well. That was the goal.
Yeah.
It wasn't go out and win new business. It was focus on what you have today.
Because you mentioned, and you're right, we do judge, don't we? We judge other people, we judge other businesses, and we also compare. And that can be quite a negative thing to do, because you can see businesses growing and opening offices in different jurisdictions, and you think, oh, we should be doing that as well. So I think it's quite challenging to stay in your lane, stay on your course, and do something really well. And I think that is a great way to do business. But we're also then being challenged from what we see, the urge to grow, the urge to do something different because they're doing it. And then you do the comparison, and then you can look inward and go, oh, we're not doing that because we're not very good. So we get bombarded as leaders, don't we, from what we see all the time. So I guess from your perspective, it's a case of just doing things well, but still looking to grow your people and grow your ambitions, etc., but just in this lane. I think that's really good.
I mean, I'm exceedingly proud of it. I think the team's amazing, and it's why I come to work every day feeling really inspired and ready to do more stuff. But I just want to go back to something you said. We are constantly bombarded with information and comparative measures. I think as humans, we are wired that way. We are wired to compare ourselves to others. The real challenge, and I think the ask, is to find ways to stop doing that, to find ways to remind yourself that what you are doing is actually enough, that more doesn't necessarily mean better. It just means more. And we grew up in a world where even as children, we learn to look at what other people have and to think we should have those things too. I'm not convinced, and maybe I'm wrong, that more material wealth is really where it's at. I think as human beings, we are meaning-making machines. We derive purpose from understanding what's happening in the world around us. So if we truly understand our core, whether that's in the business world or in our personal lives, then that is the reminder of where we need to be pointing, right? It's about finding that anchor. Not to limit yourself necessarily, but to calm the nerves when the outside world tells you what you are doing isn't good enough, smart enough, fast enough, efficient enough, growth enough. There are other ways to grow. It's not just about the bottom line.
And we'll come on to that, because I think, again, that's a key discussion point here. But where you are now, I guess the question I've got is, when did you assume a leadership role, and when did you truly believe you were a leader?
Yeah. So in preparation for this, you sent me some notes, and you asked that question twice. And both times when I was thinking about it, I would say the following, and I don't want it to come across as overly, what's the word? Like unwilling to take the label or whatever. But for me, I don't think I am a leader. So fundamentally, in my heart, if you ask me, when did you become a leader? I would answer that with, well, how do you define a leader? Because everyone's definition of a leader is different.
Yeah.
And I think the day you think you're a leader is the day you might need to ask yourself different questions. The reason I say that is because leadership isn't something, it's not a title you are given. It's something you earn, and every day is different. And by that, I mean, leaders are not defined by titles. I think leaders are defined by action. And it's other people who will give you that title of leader, not you yourself. That in its purest form for me is leadership. So when I look around me at the leaders I believe are leaders, they're often not people who want the title or who want the recompense of being at the top of their game. It's more folks who inspire me, who make me want to do better, who raise the bar, who set the focus, who set the direction, who do all of the things that we talk about leaders doing, but who don't assume this title and this mantle and just stay on the pedestal and stay there static. Does that make sense?
It does. I think I asked that question because I'm quite a basic person. Because we all talk about leadership, and I always try and take it back and say, well, what is a leader? And the definition of a leader. And I think we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and I was saying that I remember Gordon Ramsay, and I thought, well, he's a leader because he's just angry all the time, but he gets things done. And that was probably my view, as in, well, that's a leader. Or you can do it from the military perspective. You've got leaders within those organizations. And I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not like them. So how can I be a leader if that's my perception of what is a leader? That's not me. And I think this conversation is about understanding that. So my question is, do you think anyone can be a leader?
Yes. Anybody can be a leader. And that is the beauty of it. There's so much potential in the world and around the place. Leadership doesn't just come with a title in a corner office. Leadership doesn't come with a massive paycheck. Leadership can come in the home, around the dinner table. Leadership can come in a school. You were talking about swim meets. Leadership can come through coaching. Leadership can come in all forms, from all walks of life and from all people. And that is, for me, the power of what a leader is. A leader is someone who understands the value of care. Leaders who have a command and control style like Gordon Ramsay, that's a form of leadership, sure, but it's not one I necessarily aspire to today. I think in today's world, one which is quite uncertain, fueled by change, constantly moving, quite volatile, quite uncertain, I think we need a different kind of leader. We basically need people who can truly inspire and give others a road to walk down without forcing them down the road. That's what I believe.
Yeah. No, I think you are right. But is there a stage before that? Before you can lead other people, before you can show up in that way, do you really need to understand yourself? Are the things that you need to overcome and be honest with yourself about who you are before you can lead other people? Because I think where I am is I've been a titled leader, but I think during COVID it made me realize what I think leadership is. But it's probably now that I understand my own purpose that I can lead being authentic. So it's not just a case of you're the MD, off you go. There is a process, but I think my question is, do you think before you can lead, before you can inspire and have those conversations, do you really need to know and understand who you are?
Yes, 100%.
I'm glad you said that.
I think...
Otherwise, it'll be a quick podcast. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, it's been nice.
Great.
Well, that didn't go so well. Yes, I think at our core, so it comes back to, I think, a theme that's emerging in this conversation, which I'm finding fascinating, which is, do you know yourself before you know how you want to lead? And the link between those two is really critical, in my opinion, because we are who we are, and therefore how we lead. Those two things are not separate entities. I think pre-COVID, let's talk about COVID, because I think no conversation about leadership is complete without talking about the pandemic, unfortunately. Yeah. So there was leadership before the pandemic, and now there's leadership after the pandemic. And I think what the pandemic did was it inserted an external kind of mirror into what leaders needed to do. And it gave us all, well, I don't know if I want to say time, but it gave us an impetus to look inside and try to determine what we really valued in a way that other external circumstances don't necessarily force us to. So many of us were in homes with families or loved ones or parents we were caring for, or kids in school, and had to juggle multiple responsibilities. And pre-COVID, we used to separate. I mean, you know this, right? The language we used to use were things like work and life. Yeah. What you do at home versus what you do in the workplace and stuff. And there was this like separation, clear separation. Boundary between how you work and how you live. Almost like work wasn't a part of life, which I find
bizarre. I mean, that's bizarre, yeah.
Because work is part of life, whether you like it or not. It's part of what you do with your time. And we spend a third of our lives working. So how can that be separate from your life? But anyway, COVID merged them together, right? Whether we liked it or not, they became one. You would be on a conference call and your kids would show up in the background, or you'd be on a conference call and the doorbell would go, or whatever. It sort of blurred the lines. And therefore, that reevaluation was this incredible opportunity to look inward and think, okay, who am I and who do I want to be and how do I want to lead? Mm-hmm. And so now, post-pandemic, and the world is still full of uncertainty, but we have come out of the pandemic, the question becomes, what have we learned and what will we change about how we lead going forward? And that's the crux of it. I think we need to understand ourselves before we can understand others. Because if we don't understand ourselves, leadership will get reduced to a set of sort of traits and skills. So we'll say, you need to know how to have difficult conversations. You need to know how to offer feedback. You need to know how to paint a picture. You need to know blah, blah, blah. And it becomes like a laundry list of skills that you have to learn. But I think leadership is so much more than a skill. It's actually who we are. And this comes back to that philosophical debate we were just having about, when did you see yourself as a leader? I think you don't see yourself as a leader. You either are leading or you are not. It's an action.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
I think it's innate.
Yeah.
It's
inside you.
Yeah, it's not a title. And I remember years ago when I was appointed the MD, and somebody close to me said, "Oh, now you've got power and control." It was never about that. It was never about that. It was, their perception was, you've been anointed the MD, so you've now got the power and control. You never spoke like that, but anyway. But it was, to me, it was a case of, well, actually, this is about bringing people together to enable us to achieve greater things. But it was, in a way, about control, as in we need to have a uniform message, we need to be clear, we need to have the strategy and the objectives. But it was never about top-down, you must do. That's never been my style. But again, sometimes the people that you see, that is their style because it is very sort of autocratic. But going back to COVID, when in March 2020 actually, when it happened, when you were told to stay at home, what was your reaction to that? Because things changed in that was like, this is real.
Yeah. So we had been hearing noises of there was this pandemic and how was it going to play out and should we be preparing the business for it? But it wasn't very clear, was it? It sort of, the lead up into March was quite soft in terms of its messaging. So when we finally locked down, I remember distinctly walking off the floor in our old building and thinking, we'll be back in a few weeks. Yeah, they're locking us down, but they're not going to lock us down for long. It'll be a couple weeks and we'll be fine. So in my head, I was like, it's temporary. We can do this. I had just taken over as COO at the time. So it was a bit of a, I'd say, trial by fire, but that's probably not the right expression, in the sense that I had stepped into this role and I felt this kind of sense of responsibility to the team and to what I had to do and deliver and support. But given we were locking down, it was a little unclear to me how I was going to do that, if I'm honest. So anyway, 2 weeks turned into 2 years. And we all learned by winging it, really. I mean, I learned just by trying. And I am so lucky that I work with a team who was willing to put up with me while I tried different things. I mean, remember, we were learning the technology. Like, I had never used Teams or Zoom in my life. We hadn't really been fully remote ever in our business. We had a few people who worked from home on certain days, but that was it. We needed to navigate what it meant when 75, at the time we were a smaller size team, but when 50 people join a group meeting, how do you even make sure people are engaged? Do you ask people to turn their cameras on? Do you let people keep them off? Do you unmute, mute? Oh, you're on mute. You know, all of this.
Yeah.
There was so much going on. And I think there were all the emotions. It was like everything from anger and grief to a certain extent of why are we being told we have to stay home, to a sense of relief perhaps and a little bit of happiness. I hesitate to use that word, but just a little bit of, oh, maybe I have some respite. Maybe I'm finally going to get some space to think. So I think there was kind of a vast continuum of emotions being created, but there was a lot going on for folks. I mean, we did things like, there was this lovely initiative that someone started, Phone a Friend. So it was every week we would each get a name pulled out of a hat that we had to call that person and just check in with them. A 5-minute phone call to ask them how they're doing. Just because when everyone is locked down, you don't see the same things. You don't feel the same things. And if you never make the phone call, it's really easy to, I say pretend lightly, but it's easy to brush over the pain that some folks might be feeling. So it was really small things that we did to intentionally connect. But in a way, I think we emerged from the pandemic, I don't want to say stronger, but just as strong as when we went in.
Yeah. And did you, because it was COVID was different for different people, obvious statement, but there were, most of us were lucky enough in my business to work from an office, as in they're at home, they had an office. But we had some younger people who didn't. It was literally just like one room. And I always look back and think it must have been far tougher for you because I had my family, I had my kids, they continued to annoy me during the whole 2 years, and furthermore, it never stops. But I look back and think they must have been lonely. And I think my view at the time was I'd rather over-communicate than under-communicate.
Couldn't agree more.
Because it was almost, this is the unknown, so let's just keep talking. So we did the quizzes and we did all of that. And after a while, it's like, not another quiz. Yeah. So we were just having conversation. I think the feedback that we had is it was nice to see people in it. Maybe that it was nice to see me in a different light that they could see with my family, because my kids used to walk in, So I think it was probably nice to see that I was human in a way. Not like I walk around like a Borg, but I am human. But I probably don't show too much emotion about my personal life. I always keep that separate. But I think I think for those younger people in where they didn't have access to family or living on their own or just in one room, it must have been really tough to be isolated at that. And I look back and I'm thinking, could I have done a bit more for them?
It's a really good question. And I think we could always do more. Hindsight is 2020. There could potentially have been other ways to make sure folks were truly okay. I'm with you, though. I think the virtual activities, we tried it all as well. I think everyone was grasping at straws. We had no idea. Bring people together over games, have drinks together, have comedy nights, and all sorts of things creatively that were done. But it went beyond that. You're right. There were people who were truly struggling. I think that's why we saw a lot of young people move back home when they could. I still think loneliness was everywhere. And it's funny, we talk a lot about the folks who are alone in their bedrooms working, but I sometimes wonder also about the people who are with their families working. I don't think loneliness only comes when you're not surrounded. I think sometimes you can be surrounded by people and still feel quite lonely.
You can be alone, yeah.
And that for me was also something that became quite evident, is that, as people in a workplace, where does our responsibility end? Where, how far can you stretch? There are some really existential questions that I think everyone was asking themselves about. These folks are important to our business and they are a part of who we are. We need to take care of them. How far does that care extend when the lines between work and home are completely one? It's a challenging question. And not every business could support every individual in the same way. Like, I think sometimes it's quite easy for me to talk about supporting a team that is under 100 people. But I'm thinking of the big multinationals with workforces spread around the world. Yeah. Logistically, how do you do that? What does it look like? It's a fascinating question.
Did you feel supported?
100%. I felt really supported. I do. I often think about this, and we talk about this a lot amongst the team. We tried really, really hard to support the team. I sometimes wonder if leaders are supported in the same way as their teams are supported. Like, I sometimes do wonder if the leadership team in businesses feels as supported as the teams within those businesses do. Because I do think there's a part of me that wonders if leadership is quite a lonely job, actually, in a way. Or when you're handed that mantle and that title, if that just means you're going to have to do this alone. And I've reconciled that in my own head as the answer being no, it doesn't have to be. You have a choice. Sure, there are things you don't share widely. Sure, there are things you have to do yourself. But making decisions on your own versus feeling lonely are very different things. You can build yourself a network. You can find friends who are willing to talk to you. You can build a team that makes decisions in a way that allows you to feel supported too. So you have agency. I think that's the point. And it comes back to your point about you got to know yourself. I think really understanding yourself in all of this is critical. That's the kind of key point.
I think, again, you speak a lot of sense. And I think having agency is important. But I think as being a leader, you do have to make decisions and you can't have a running commentary. Like, today I'm thinking about this and tomorrow I'm thinking about this.
No.
It's almost, you do need to protect people because we talked about the power of language. I'm thinking about changing this. What? Just something like that. What do you mean changing this? So sometimes it can be lonely because you do need to make those decisions, but you do, I guess, need the time to make those decisions properly, the headspace. So you think things through. So creating that space in one's own mind, I think, is hugely important. And I think from my perspective, it is lonely being a leader, but I don't feel I can't reach out and speak to people. But I also have to think about where the business is going. Where do I want it to be? There are challenges. There are people that will need to change with the business to achieve. And it's just taking that all on board and listening to yourself. How am I going to plot this course then? And then you can start talking to people, and the power of communication is really important. But I do think you need that space here just to be able to think, what can I do? And we'll talk about the wonder, actually. One of your YouTube videos, which I listened to the other day.
You stop saying that.
Yeah. YouTuber, yeah. But I think it can be. I think it can be lonely. We juggle many balls, I think.
What do you mean by lonely?
I think maybe because I'm protecting people where I don't want to share everything. I don't want to. Maybe there's part of me that thinks they look at me like I've got all the answers, and I seriously don't. Winging it.
And none of us do.
Yeah, winging it has worked quite well in my career. But I think it's a case of I don't feel alone. I'm not wording this correctly, but it's just having the space to make that decisions without constantly checking with other people and having that running commentary. Just need to be that quietness, almost that peace.
Yes.
That's what I'm probably trying to say, that peace to make those decisions, whereby I don't want to disrupt things.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that goes on in my head. I'm here, I'm there, I'm global, I'm this, I'm that. You just got to be careful. But as long as you've got people you can reach out to. And I've got a great sounding board, my wife. I mean, she's a midwife, right? So her day compared to my day is completely different.
Wow.
So it's that grounding. So I always think I can share. And then she'll say, you'll be fine. You'll do that. And it's probably what I need to hear.
Practical.
Yeah, practical. You'll be just sit down and do it. That's what I need to hear.
Yeah.
But I do think there are many leaders or many people out there who feel quite lonely.
I think this is something worth, if I may, just exploring for a second, because I too used to believe that leadership was lonely. And over the last 3 years, I've sort of gone on a bit of a process of inquiry about why. So I think where I've settled is something you've alluded to, which is you cannot have stream of consciousness as a leader. You, in the sense that you can't just say everything that you want to say in every moment. You need to be able to parse and filter for importance, clarity, and message. That means that your vision, so for lack of a better way to describe it, your master plan, may not be ready to reveal immediately. You may need to take people on a path to get there. But that is different and distinct from how you feel as a leader, in my opinion. And by that, I mean the decision-making sometimes has to happen on your own individually, so solo endeavor. But the feeling of connection that you can have with your team is very collaborative, even though they don't know everything. And I think what we are talking about here is the struggle between what you know inside and what you can say outside. So there is perhaps a disconnect in our brains when we're feeling lonely but they don't know everything I think. They were only hearing part of it. Am I being authentic?
I'm being real. Yeah.
And that's the struggle. I think where I've settled is, unfortunately, as leaders, we have a responsibility, not unfortunately, we have a responsibility to our teams to keep them safe and well and able to do their jobs in the best possible way that we can. At the same time, we also have to have strategic vision to continue to achieve the goals we set for the longer term for the businesses we run. And those two things do not have to be mutually exclusive. We don't have to feel lonely. We just need to make single-minded decisions alone sometimes, but still can build a network, as you said so beautifully with your wife, of sounding boards, of people who are going to kick us and tell us, that's not a big deal, you can do this.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to lump it all into one feeling, which is loneliness. And I guess what I'm challenging myself to do, and perhaps challenging you to do, is separate how you feel from how you act. They don't have to be linked.
Yeah.
I think that's where I've settled. I mean, I'm not saying leadership is never lonely, by the way. I'm just saying I don't think just because we can't tell everybody everything, that makes us bad leaders or in some way responsible for everything. I think we need to pull it apart and maybe deconstruct it a little bit. It's a bit nuanced, I guess is what I'm saying.
Life is full of context and nuance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's never as easy as just black or white and that's it. Because the things that the processes you need to go through, that was articulated really well. And I understand that. And with your own leadership journey, I guess you're still learning now.
Yeah.
You're in this is a constant evolution, learning process to become the best leader you can be. Is that right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think the day I stop learning is the day, I don't know. I think I'm going to lose the spark. Like if I stop learning, I'm not going to feel excited about the work I do, because I think there's always more to know. And because there's so much change around us, there's definitely more to know. And that's exciting to me. I find that really energizing. We could do things differently. We could be more creative. We could innovate. We could stretch here, stretch there, or we could stay steady, and that's okay too. There's no need to constantly change, but there is a need to grow and learn. I think we're driven by that as humans.
Yeah, I think we are. And when we look back at COVID, that was an interesting time. 2 years. It was a long time, wasn't it? Yeah, it was madness. Madness what we went through. And I remember I was on a webinar and people were talking about the changes that companies have made in terms of working from home, hybrid working, all of this. And perhaps when I started my career in the 90s, the dial was very much employer. That was it. And you were an employee. So all employer.
100%.
And now it's gone, and it's certainly shifted. Coming out of COVID, what changes have you continued to implement which were different before COVID?
So I think I said this before, and we were all office-based pre-COVID, and now we're hybrid. So we have a combination of people who work in the office, people who work from home, and we've stuck to that. We believe that it's important to come together regularly during a week to build connection and collaboration. So we do a bit of that, but we also allow people the flexibility to work from home when they need to. That's really been a nice thing. We've instituted more opportunities to gather. So gathering has become sort of a key theme in the business now. We come together for certain events and certain learning opportunities and certain team meetings because it's important that we engage in discussion, innovation, and challenge together in a room. So that's a bit different. I think we're more intentional about how we meet and why. We ask ourselves the question, does this require a meeting? Can we be virtual? Does it require in person? We're a bit more thoughtful about which gatherings really matter. And I think we've enhanced, and of course, I'm going to be biased because I'm looking at it from one perspective, and it would be good to ask the team this, but I think we've enhanced our communication and our listening strategies as a leadership team. I think we canvass opinions more on how people are feeling, what we could do better, how we could improve. We really want to hear the feedback from the team on where they see gaps or opportunities for improvement. And at the same time, we adapt to those pieces of feedback and we try to learn from them. We're much more active and intentional in that way. I think we always listened and heard, but now it's really intentional and really regular and frequent. We do it at least twice a year. So there's that. We've had a lot more initiatives for opportunities for learning and professional development in a way that we didn't have before. I mean, people always had the opportunity to take courses, go off and do, seminars and so on. But now we do a few more things as a team. Like last year, we did some work on good conflict. I don't know if you've heard of Amanda Ripley. She wrote a book called High Conflict. How You Get In, How You Get Out, I believe is the subtitle, but I'm probably getting that wrong. Yeah. And then basically, she came in and did a training session with us on why conflict matters and how to stay in good conflict. That's what she calls it.
Oh, okay.
Strategies like active listening and how you actually do it, role play and modeling it for us and teaching it. And it was great. I think it's a life skill. How do you not take challenge personally? How do you engage with the other person to really hear them? How do you move forward in a productive and, helpful way? So things like that. We've sort of tried a lot of things out. We're really a test and learn business. So it's nice.
That's great. Just touching on listening. I did a podcast with Brendan Fraser, who's a podcaster in the US. And he's typical American, great hair, great teeth. He'll be listening to that. And he said to me, we talked about listening because he's into behavioral sort of finance, I think it's called. And he came up with a stat that, listening is really hard. Really listening is hard because you just have to almost let the conversation flow without control because we like to control everything. Like I'm looking around thinking, right, is everything ready and working? But he did say that there's something like about 50% have either one or less than one person that actually truly listens to them. So for example, a person, 50% of those people only have, I think it's one or less in terms of they've got people to actually talk to that will truly listen. That's a stat. Now, the other 50% it's like 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, but it was really small. And I did a poll, and it was interesting to see the results that there's probably in that poll of about 60 odd people, there's about maybe 30% that have almost, nobody in their life that will truly listen to them. And I found that shocking. I mean, they were very honest and, but I've got that data and I thought, going through your life and having nobody that truly listens to you. And I'm going to move the conversation on in terms of how we can connect now, but surely part of that is listening to people, to be heard as well. So that's quite a shocking statement, I think, in terms of a statistic, that many of us don't have more than one person that will truly listen.
Sobering. It's truly sobering. I think there's a statistic I had come across that said that only something like 1 in 4 people in the UK don't have even one single friend at work. So 1 in 4 of the total workforce don't have even one friend in their workplace.
How lonely.
It's a similar statistic, similarly shocking in my opinion, because we need people who can listen. I think listening is super challenging. I'm not great at it. I'm still working at it. I think the nice thing about what Amanda and Helene, the 2 women who came in to talk to us about good conflict, taught us the strategy of looping, which you've maybe heard of, which is where you ask a question, the other person starts talking, and what you do in response is you don't start forming your argument in your head, which is what so many of us start doing, right? We listen to what the person is saying, sort of, and then we think, no, that's wrong. I'm going to say this, or I'm going to ask this. And we're already preparing the next statement before the other person has finished completing their thought. And so what they encouraged us to do was, instead of having an agenda, so to your point on control, you just truly listen to the words coming out of the person's mouth and you paraphrase back what you heard until such time as the other person says, yeah, that's exactly what I meant.
Yeah, I've heard that before, looping, yeah.
And then when they say that, that's your cue that you are allowed to speak about whatever it is that you have on your mind. And I thought, wow, can you imagine if every conversation slowed down to that point? It would shift both the speed and the quality, I think, of the conversations we're having. But it's really hard to do.
It is. We're just wired in certain ways, aren't we?
We're really always about pace, right?
Yeah, and we talked about judgment. And we are human. We're very quick to judge.
That's normal.
I know, but it's, sometimes I would have a meeting. I'm judging the meeting already. I'm judging the person. I just got to step back, let them talk, let them whatever they need to say, let them get it out onto the table, and allow them to explore without judgment. Because I think sometimes we're very quick to jump in. And even if we're not judging, we then sort of take ownership of the conversation to say, well, actually, that happened to me as well. And then it's all about you and it's that person, and I have been doing that and I'm very conscious not to do that now. So when somebody talks to me about their experience or they went out and did whatever, I don't say, well, happened to me as well. Let me take control. Yes, yeah, it's all about me. But it can be learned. It can be learned. So you brought in some experts to obviously teach us on that.
Yeah. And we try now, we joke internally, have you looped them? It's become part of the language.
So is every conversation now repeated back to you?
No, it's not. Yeah. And then we're like, don't do that.
I'm not offering you
Please
a pay rise. Yeah. You're not offering me a pay rise.
Did you understand? Yeah. Repeat after me.
We cannot afford it.
It needs to be placed in the right context, right? But it is really useful when there's challenge. I think that's the point.
Okay. What are your core values as a leader or in a leadership position?
I'd say they probably 4 core values come to mind. The first is the power of connection. We've talked a lot about it. It really matters to me. Building connection, true connection, authentic connection probably goes back to my childhood. That really matters. The second is attention. Making sure that when I'm with another human being, I'm actually paying attention to what they're saying to me. So this is the point about listening.
Yeah.
Then there's an interesting one, which a friend of mine who wrote about recently, refraction. So the way I think about refraction is, it's what happens to light when it travels through an object. It tends to bend. I'm simplifying, and I'm not a physicist, so I'm sure there's some technical way of describing this. But basically, when a light beam is shone through a prism, the angle of the beam changes. And I think as leaders, we have an opportunity to refract the conversations we hear and the language that we use by the language we use. So in other words, there's a debate going on and it's clearly mounting in tension, stress, and challenge. As a leader, you can step in and with different words diffuse the conversation. That, in my opinion, is refraction. It's a very important value of mine. I'm not conflict averse. I think conflict is good in the right doses, but I think my job is to facilitate the sort of turning down the volume a little bit, keeping things calm, because I think we're better when we're calm than when we're angry. So that's a third one. And the final one for me is all about impact and expanding the impact of everyone on the team. I've worked for leaders who have been more of a command and control style, as I've worked for leaders who have been completely hands-off, do what you want kind of style, and everything in between. And the ones who I respect and admire the most are the ones who allow the team to expand their impact. They sort of step away. They let their people do the job, and they have trust in the people they work with. And that's something I think is really fundamental to building a healthy team.
What do you think the team would say about you?
I have a big mouth, I'm loud, and I make a lot of silly jokes. But generally, I work hard. I think they would say I work hard.
Yeah.
I have been known to stick my foot in my mouth, say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But I've also tried every time I've done that to explain why and to acknowledge the mistakes. I hope they would say I'm a human leader, but I don't know if that's what they would say. You'd have to ask them.
Well, actually, I did. No, I didn't.
Yeah, that would have been so good.
I should have done that.
She's so shit.
And come on in, yeah. What's this leader stuff? Yeah. No, I didn't. I always, it's probably a typical question to ask, but I think from what you're saying, I'm sure there would be a lot of positivity with regards to how you approach leadership with those four core themes, but also how the company is aligned to that as well. So I think it's all connected, that.
Yeah, that is so... I often think about how lucky I am to work for a firm where I feel fundamentally in my bones that my values are so deeply aligned with the business's values. I think that's quite rare. It feels quite rare. I've never counted it up, but I think I've worked for 10 businesses since I started in finance. And this is the first business where truly I can say, hand on heart, I understand what we're doing, and I'm committed to helping us get there. And I really hope I can encourage everyone on the team to feel the same way, or at least uncover why they don't, because I think we can learn something from that.
Do you think we have lost some of that time, some of that wonder in the post-COVID world because we've got time to think? I remember thinking, what could life be like? What could the business be like? And it made us do different things. Do you think we may have lost that a little bit? Because I can see now companies saying, you're not working from home, you're working in the office. I can see things changing because maybe the bottom line isn't where it needs to be. So we need to get people back in because that's what we did. I'm just wondering if that's now where businesses really started to change and think differently, whether they're reverting to type, because it's a different market now. We don't have the post-COVID boom in terms of the economy. It's tough out there. So whether companies are reverting to type, because I think that then comes to strength of leadership to say, this is our path. And there will be some hurdles. But what I can see is companies going back.
Yeah, I think it comes back to something you said early on about when everyone around you is bombarding you with signals that you should do something different. How do you stay anchored in what you know to be your truth without deviating, not getting pulled in the direction of something different? It's hard. I would say one of the things, I see the same thing as you do. The press is so good at reporting all of the negative news.
Negative all the time.
Stories about people, you must go back to work. I'm not sure we always know the full story. We don't know why businesses are doing what they do because we aren't in their boardrooms with the people making those decisions. Am I giving them too much credit? Are they maybe making the decisions that are easiest for them? Perhaps they are. But from where I sit, everyone's got to do what they have to do, right? They do have shareholders and stakeholders who are asking them to perform at the same levels as they were pre-pandemic and will continue to do so. A lot of demands, I think, are placed on leaders, management teams around the world. How you do that? So I guess, can you both be flexible and achieve goals? I think you can. It's a bit like the perennial question I always have with friends of mine of, can you be a leader and be kind? Because the images that I grew up around of strong leaders were rarely leaders who demonstrated a lot of care and kindness. They were often leaders who just sort of bulldozed their way through things. I'm thinking Jack Welch. And, these were the kinds of people, the figures that were held up as exemplars for what leadership should be.
Bottom 10%, get rid. Yeah. That's it, hard-nosed.
I'm sorry, but that's just not what I believe to be. Well, I said I wasn't going to judge. I do not wish to be that leader.
No.
I wish to be a leader who can be caring and motivating at the same time. I think it's possible.
It is. And I think, again, I always say I don't judge other companies. If that's what they want to do, it's up to them. It's not for me to judge.
But the news is one way.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're reverting to type. You're absolutely right. But we can be different. I think we can. We've seen that other models work now. We've actually proven that they can. The question is, will we? Will we do something different?
A lot of people listen to this podcast, they are leaders within their own business, or leaders within a department or a function. And things are changing. We've got AI, which is literally running at us at a million miles an hour. I know I had a conversation with Poppy Achilles in this room a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about data and we were talking about AI. But it was about businesses need to look at themselves in a different way. And that then still comes from leadership. So I'm looking at the future and thinking there is so much change ahead of us that we need to be leaders. And we need to adapt to what's happening because there's a lot of uncertainty. But I guess my question is there a blueprint that we could be looking at, almost like a checklist? Because I think we've talked about it's got to come from within, it's got to be authentic, it's got to be real. And you've also got some of the skills that are required as well. So there's a lot going on and businesses are changing. And everybody listening to this, their business will change at some point. So how do we handle that change and how do we become better leaders? Where can we go to learn more?
I would like to know the answer to that question as well.
Okay.
I have one. So when you find it, could you please point me in the direction of that toolkit?
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, let me know. I can offer my own opinion on it. I think it starts, you've said it already, from within. You need to know yourself, do the work on yourself. Otherwise, you can't do the work on the business. It's not possible. So I really encourage everyone I know to do some soul searching, whether that's writing or reading or listening or therapy or whatever form it takes. Yeah. Do what you've got to do to figure out who you are and why you're that way. Understanding the stories we tell ourselves and how we can shift those stories is really important. And then, of course, you can build skills. You can build skills through workshops, through courses, through training. There are all kinds of things out there in this wonderful world of AI and online and virtual classrooms that allow you to learn. But then you have to join it together and determine where you want to take the endeavors you're pursuing and how you want to get there. And all of that is soft stuff. It's not, I don't think a blueprint gives you the answer. I think you need to find your way, but it always stems from your core. So whatever that core is, you need to make sure that whatever objective you have aligns with who you are. And I'm sorry, this is very woolly and not specific at all. But I think that's why leadership is so challenging, is that if we could bottle it and just hand it out, everybody would be doing it perfectly. But we can't, because there are all of these external circumstances that influence how we need to lead. And you said it, change is everywhere. But what if we saw uncertainty not as a bug in the system, but as the system? In other words, Uncertainty is just the way things are, folks. That's just it.
It is. It's natural.
A fact.
Yeah, nobody can judge the future.
You can't change that. Therefore, operate within it and reverse engineer it so that uncertainty is no longer scary, but uncertainty is seen as possibility. What if you could do anything you wanted to do with your business? What would that look like? Chart it out and then figure out how to get there slowly and steadily together with a group of collaborators, with your peers, with your team, with whoever that is. Do it together. I think that's the power.
Can I talk to you about one of your YouTube videos?
Oh my gosh. How many times have you said the words YouTube video?
About 3.
God.
We'll edit them out, don't worry. I want to speak about both of them, actually.
Yeah, right.
Because the other one was different. But your TEDx talk, I'm interested to know about that, because you talk about the wonder, don't you? You talk about that blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
So this is probably a nice segue if you're thinking about, okay, things are changing.
Yeah.
Where do I want my business to go? I think this is the possibility bit now. This is the imagination, as Einstein said. Imagination, it can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You know, I know we've got logic, but imagination he talks about. And I've misquoted him, but he's not here. He's not here.
It's
He's not
okay.
here to say anything.
He won't see you.
He's not going to infringe, copyright me or whatever. He's long gone. But yeah, can you talk us through that talk and the end part where you talk about that blank piece? Because I found that really well put.
That's super kind. So the way I came to it was through my teaching experience. In schools, we give students blank pieces of paper all the time and tell them to draw what they want or write down what they want. Or, there's just the notebook, pull out the notebook, write down 3 words that describe who you are, this kind of stuff. And the first time I came upon it, or the best metaphor I could find for it, was this children's story called Harold and the Purple Crayon, where it's a story of a little boy. The book was written in 1955, which for the historians among you, you might remember in the U.S. was the beginning of the sort of consumer culture where Coca-Cola had just started marketing its drink in cans, which made distribution a lot easier. McDonald's had opened its first store, which meant they were going to reproduce burgers in the same style with the same taste every single time. Disney had just opened its gates to sort of bottle the experience of excitement and imagination. There were all these examples of companies innovating to produce at scale the same experience every time in the same way. And when Crockett wrote the book, he wanted to push back against that idea that as humans, we are driven to conform, right? We want to be part of the in-group. That's just what motivates us. It's because our genetic code tells us if we're not part of a group, we won't survive, because when the tigers come knocking, if we're together, we're stronger than if we're alone, and all of this stuff, right? So anyway, the book was a response at the time, and Harold is a little boy who's 4 years old, and with a purple crayon, he grabs a blank piece of paper and he draws what will become his adventure over the course of one evening with a purple crayon. And I started thinking about, and when I was teaching, sorry, this is jumbled up and I'm jumping between things, but basically when I was teaching, we would read the story and then I would ask the kids to draw the world you dream of seeing. And what I noticed was that children would always talk about the connection between the world they were in and the world they imagined as being possible. And I started to wonder, what if as adults we did the same thing? We imagined what we would create if there were no constraints in our path. And then we worked out how we would build the bridge between here and there. And I think the blank page is just meant to serve as a springboard to help us all in the leadership sphere to unlock what I know we have in us, which is this power of creativity. I think we all have it. We just forget it. And I use the word wonder because I saw this beautiful definition of what wonder is. Wonder and curiosity get used interchangeably in our language, but they're actually not the same thing. Technically, wonder is where you take something that is familiar to you and you find something unbelievable about it. Whereas curiosity is learning about something you don't yet know, but operates, but you're learning about it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of
Okay.
and they're subtly different.
Yeah.
So for example, you can experience wonder when I'm going to use an American example because that's all that comes to mind right now. But when you see the Grand Canyon for the first time, for me, that's wonder. It's this incredible experience of greatness, openness, nature's force. You feel very small. There's a wonder in that. But you can also experience wonder when, for example, a child laughs. That's a very frequent experience that feels different when you find the joy in it. So I hope I've explained that.
Absolutely. I completely get that.
So wonder doesn't have to be those incredible trips of a lifetime. It can be really small, really simple things. And I think we need a bit more of that in the workplace. Why? A, it encourages us to be creative, but B, it keeps us open. We're in a world consumed by division, anger, frustration, and to some extent, hate. And I think wonder would serve as a really nice antidote to that if we could construct it more intentionally in the workplaces.
Is that something that you've done or you're doing at the moment?
It's something I think about a lot, and we try to infuse it into what we do daily. Some days are good, some days are not so good, and some days the day job takes over and there isn't really room to actively engage with creative thinking in the same way as you might like to. But I think if you stay centered and you stay calm and you stay focused on the end goal at all times, if you come back to that, wonder becomes instrumental in moving that forward. I don't think we should kid ourselves that our lives at work are not just an opportunity to gather around a campfire and sing together. We have a job to do. And sometimes that means just buckling down and doing the job. So wonder has its place, but I guess I'm just saying it's another tool in our toolkit. We've got so many tools we've talked about today.
But I don't think we don't use it very often.
We don't.
We have those regimented meetings, the profit and loss, the budgets, client retention, but we don't have the wonder and the excitement that can really breed into a company. What could it be? And if there is a disconnect with employees because they don't feel connected to work or the job that they're doing, creating this wonder, creating this vision of what the business could do, what it could solve, that's how you really move forward. But I just don't think we do enough of that. I think we're in the trenches, just doing what we do. But I get it. We've got to buckle down. I get it. But there is a time just to go, piece of paper, what would you do? How do we do this?
I think it's so important. So important.
I think so many people would buy into that because you get all these ideas.
The way we try to do it, and it's a really small thing. It's just one way. Maybe just try it. They always say, don't try this at home. Maybe try it at home and see how it goes. Ask open-ended questions a bit more frequently. So you don't actually have to have a blank sheet of paper. You could just say, let's say I play this game with a team every once in a while. Let's say an alien dropped down from Earth and wanted to be your friend. What's the one thing you would tell them about yourself so that they could become your friend? Just open-ended, crazy questions that you can find everywhere.
Wow.
It makes people think about something totally different. And then you go back to the day job and all of a sudden the mind's just open because you've had to answer a completely random question. And I don't know, the circuits feel more free.
Yeah, open.
Yeah.
They're firing.
Yeah. And then you can maybe solve something that has been stumping you for a while in some other area. You know how they say, like, sometimes when you go for a walk, you think about something different, all of a sudden the idea that you've been struggling to find comes to you. It's a bit like that. You allow your mind to wander and suddenly the connections get made.
Yeah.
I think we should try it more.
Is there an element of spirituality within leadership?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. And my answer may not be the one you're looking for.
We didn't script this one.
No. I think the answer for me is yes, there is, deeply, a lot. Because my core is founded very deeply in a spiritual and religious tradition that my mother and father instilled in us as young children. So I come from quite a religious home. We are Hindu by tradition, and the idea of living a good life, as in, when I say a good life, I don't mean a materially good life. I mean being a good citizen empowering those around you, being of service is very fundamental to how I was raised. And that therefore has informed, whether I like it or not, my leadership style. So yes, I think that spiritual connection between heart and mind, between a power that is greater than me. I'm not suggesting everyone needs to believe in it, but I believe there's something, a purpose.
Well,
that we are
there's
here
either
for.
something or nothing. As in there's something, or everything is just an accident, a cosmic accident. That's it.
Yeah.
Big bang. So,
Or could there be something in the middle?
well, my belief system is there is something. I don't, and people listening to this, and I know the guys in the office will be, I have become a lot more spiritual, but it's not down just to a particular religion. It's just a knowing that there is something else and to explore that. And what it's doing is it's making me look inward. And it's not trying to, don't worry about the material items. Don't compare yourself to other people or other businesses. Just be you and find that peace to be you and that strength. But it's not in the traditional a particular God or anything like that. It's just that knowing and exploring that. So, which is why I asked the question, because I think that's where my leadership has developed. To understand me, to go into me, I've had to probably do things I would never have done before. And the people listen to this and go, what? Where's he going? Because they've known me for 20 odd years. Like, what is he doing? But it's working for me. And I don't say, everyone else must do it.
No.
But for me, it's working because I think this is the path that I'm on. And I think it's a great place. Like, it's cool. Where we're going with this is a bit different, but to enjoy it. But I do think certainly leadership, connectivity, people, with me, it's coming from something else. That's my view.
So I don't know. I was listening to Chris Martin, Coldplay, was being interviewed on The Tonight Show or some U.S. show. And he was talking about the fact that he's been very public about the fact that he's only going to make 12 albums. And this latest one that's just come out is his 10th. So the interviewer was like, what do you mean you're only going to make 12? Like, why? You're so young. You can make another 50. He was like, no, I always knew that I had to make 12. And then he went on to describe how he sees the songwriting process and how he, gets inspiration for these songs that he writes. And he talked about the fact that he was just, and I'm sorry, I'm about to get really woo-woo here, so you can feel free to cut this out. But he talked about how he was just the receptacle through which this creativity flowed. So it's not like he was making these songs. He believed that there was a higher power that was effectively working through him to create this music that everyone loves. And I was struck by it because I think where I'm going with this is that it's becoming a lot more mainstream to talk about this idea that there may be something beyond us, bigger than us, that helps us follow a path, whatever that path might be, or they may not. I'm not suggesting it's one or the other. But it's just interesting to me that the dialogue is slowly shifting towards one where acceptance is the key. Acceptance of what? I don't know, but acceptance of ourselves in the first instance. That's what we have control over. I can't change you, but I can probably change myself, or maybe just a little. So why not work on that? And then there is something else out there. What that is and how it works for you, that's a question. But I do believe we are here to do something really worthwhile and good. We all derive sense from having a purpose, having meaning, and contributing in some way to the world around us. And for me, that's a form of spirituality, right? It's a form of, let's call it goodness.
But it is becoming more mainstream and people are talking about it. And they talk about the science as well, the quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
I mean, they lose me at quantum, I have to say.
Me too, but there is something about the atoms vibrating in the same way and all that.
Okay, I kind of get it, but I'm just going to stick over here. I think this is I understand this bit. But no, it's good that we can talk about this, and it's not woo woo stuff as well. This has been going on for thousands of years, but understanding and understanding yourself without judging people, without getting brought into this consumerism that we all seem to have. We still live in a society where it's capital markets. I get that. I'm no fool, but I think we can build a business which can take advantage of this system, but be better. That's my view. So we're going to go on this journey with me, and I'm saying to the guys, step into the light. Let me show you what it's like, because you won't want to go back.
And what do they say?
I think it's something they truly know that I believe, because for the want of a better phrase, I've said to the guys when I did my vision meeting, I don't give a shit anymore. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And I want you to come with me, because I've got a responsibility for you guys to achieve. That's what I feel.
That is so cool.
So, and I think so when you understand yourself and your purpose, it's easier then to build a vision, and that vision becomes something which is authentic. Because I work in recruitment, so you can have conversations with business owners and you say, what's your vision? And it's always about, we want to double our assets within 5 years. What's that? What does that mean? So you want to go on a deeper level. So when I'm talking to people about joining me, or people within my business, it's saying, this is where we're going, because I have a responsibility to create this journey that I want people to come on, because I know you'll be better equipped and enjoy life more if you're over here. And they all get it. But it's difficult because it's scary.
Yeah.
It's stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
But it's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
So, but it's that part of that leadership to say, come on.
Doesn't it feel lighter though, as you've reconciled with yourself, or at least accepted that this is where you want to go? I feel like purpose and professional line. And so everything feels lighter.
Yeah.
Like it kind of doesn't matter if everybody doesn't agree. But the people who do agree will come with you, and they'll come with you willingly, which is totally different to the models we've talked about over the last however many hours. It is just, you're not forcing anyone, right? It's not a controlling environment. It's look at the dream. Can you see it? Okay, we're going to take steps to get there together. And guess what? When you step into that light, it's going to feel really good. Like that's just so cool.
That's exactly what, because it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. So it is a case of almost peeling off those layers of how you should act, how you should be, how you should speak.
That's years of training.
Yeah. It's that programming. It's now saying, do you know what? I know who I am. Good stuff, bad stuff. I know who I am. I'm looking to improve. But I can see where this business can go, and I can see where you can all play a part in that. So come with me. And that was my vision meeting back in February.
Amazing.
I wrote it, because I'm like that. I wrote it on Boxing Day. I just had a feeling I needed to get something down on paper.
So cool.
I knew what my 2-year plan was. I knew where we were going. And then it's a case of, then what? Let's see where we can go. But the point was, let's go from here to here and come with me. And don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Don't look at other people and think, oh, what are they doing? Look at what we can do. Look at how we can become better. Do it that way. And that's how I want to get the team motivated.
So great.
So come and join us. Come and join BWD.
So good.
But that because it's real.
Yeah.
But it's taken me probably a long time to get there.
Yeah.
Because as you say, MD can be a status or a symbol, but it's not. It's more than that.
It's really interesting, isn't it? This idea of labeling. I'm sorry if this is off topic, but I often think as humans, we like to categorize because categories help us make sense of the world. But I wonder if categories are limiting, labels are limiting. So leadership is one label, MD is another label, COO is a label. But we are so much more than those labels. We have so many identities, so many parts of ourselves that we can bring to the fore that can help move the vision forward. And we should be comfortable letting those show. I think my training tells me that I'm not supposed to be loud, that I'm not supposed to make stupid jokes, and that I'm supposed to be wearing a suit, very staid, very serious, because I work in financial services. And I'm everything but that, because I've finally accepted that's just not who I am. I feel comfortable when I'm doing that. It doesn't feel true, and everyone can read it.
Yeah, they can see through it.
Yeah.
Those children that you saw, they would have seen straight through that.
Straight through it. So why be that person? Because it takes so much effort to be somebody else. It takes no effort to be yourself. And that's the point. Now, I'm not saying every single one of us should show every single part of ourselves all the time, every day. Of course not. Filter by all means, but know yourself. Then you choose how you show up in the world. But don't choose to show up as somebody different. That feels like such a waste of energy.
I got to know you in a way where you did a talk, The Gift. And I wanted to touch on that because I think that was so authentic, so real. And I know you did another talk, which we won't mention, but to me, I could feel the emotion, how authentic and real that was. And you talked about contentfulness, which I thought, is that a word?
No,
I did have to check. I think
it's not.
Because I'm not a well-read person. So
No.
have I missed that one?
No,
Thesaurus?
it's not a word.
But that's something that obviously, you did a couple of years ago. But that I have to say and I've watched it a couple of times, it's so real. That's you.
Yeah. So first, shout out to my sister who mentioned, she likes to tell me that I'm not allowed to make up words. That's sort of, there's a rule that says that you can't just create new words. And so this is a bit of a joke between her and I, because she's very well read and has very strong views on the changing and shifting landscape that is the English language. But anyway, contentfulness came from an idea which was the sort of mashup of contentment and mindfulness. Because in 2013, my mom passed away, and my mother was this force of nature, incredible woman who taught me everything I know, but when she was gone, left an incredible void. I always sort of relied on her for all of the wise advice and the unconditional love that she offered both my sister and I, and just the good human being that she was. She was sort of my bar, and I never probably knew that until she was gone. Like, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but it's like when someone's in your life, you almost take them for granted because they're there and they will always be there to help, or you think they will always be there to support you. And then when they're gone, somehow there's this space, and that space doesn't really get filled, but the world keeps moving. The fact that she passed away didn't seem to impact anything around me, and that was an interesting kind of time. And during that time, I think I went back and tried to somehow keep her memory alive by doing some of the things that she used to do. So I started studying some of the ancient texts, and I took classes in the Gita, which is an ancient Hindu text. I tried to learn to meditate, which has had mixed effects, I have to admit. I'm not that great at it. My brain somehow keeps going on overdrive. So I try, but I'm working on it. And I started studying leadership in a wider sense, started reading a lot. And I noticed that many leaders talk about this power of being present in the moment, the sort of the benefits of meditation and mindfulness, the joy they then are able to get when they recenter in times of crisis and all this stuff. And I came up with this idea that what if as leaders we could mash up a true sense of contentment, that is the power of enough, we don't need more, we have what we need, and a state of being present, as in the moment, and therefore get contentfulness to take our teams forward. And the idea of the gift was really, you don't need someone to give it to you. You already have everything within you. So give yourself the gift. And then once you've understood it, share it with the world if you can.
Yeah.
And it was really emotional speech for a couple of reasons. First, because I felt like my mom was there watching me, and I thought,
cool.
Yeah,
it's powerful.
This is like my gift to her, and I wish she could be here. I would have really loved her to have been there that day. But secondly, because it was the first time I spoke in a sort of public forum about my experience. And that's quite intimidating when you do it for the first time, because it feels like you're a bit exposed. And I've always had this kind of great fear. I think I said it to you the other day. It's not like my pain is worse than your pain or my pain is less than your pain, but you feel in that comparative mode, like people are going to say, why is she sharing this? Not a big deal. Like there's been hundreds of other people I've heard stories from who have had much worse experiences than her. And I agree, they have. But mine was just mine, and I was sharing it for the first time really openly. So that whole thing combined to be quite raw presentation, but really worth it. Really, really worth it.
How did you feel afterwards when you finish the presentation?
Well, firstly, relieved, like beyond measure,
Yeah.
because it was a program that lasted 15 months. It was called The Leader's Voice, and it was run by the unbelievable Sarah Lloyd Hughes, who runs a communication agency called Ginger Communications. And the culmination of this 15-month journey was, first, identify what your vision was as a leader, work on your skills as a leader, and then ultimately go to the House of Commons and give this speech. So I felt a great sense of relief, but also maybe a sense of pride that I had been able to do it. Because up until that point, I had never really spoken publicly about any of this stuff, never really surfaced any of my dreams for what I wanted my leadership to look like. I'd just sort of been on a treadmill. And so, yeah, I was really proud of it.
Yeah, you should be.
Well, thank you.
No, it should be. I've watched it a couple of times. It's so good. I guess this leads now to the final chapter of this conversation. And I know you are writing a book at the moment. The Through Line.
Yes.
Which you very kindly shared. I've read a little snippet of it. It's very good. What was the inspiration behind the book? Why are you writing it?
It's just a continuation of everything we've talked about today. I think I'd love to leave something for my daughter when she grows up to read and to remember. A lot of these experiences are my own, and there's no sort of, other reason other than I want to share what I've learned in the hopes that maybe another person can find some use from them. It sort of ties back to the themes of today's conversation, right? It's knowing yourself in order to know how to lead. It's connecting. It's paying attention. It's refracting. It's using language for good. It's expanding your leadership impact. It's all of those things just collated into one text.
Because you talk about reaching in, don't you?
Yeah.
Before you can reach out.
Yeah.
Is that what we've been talking about today?
It's all about that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, we talk about, so there's a lot of language in the leadership space, isn't there? Like servant leadership is the new sort of terminology for the idea that leaders should serve the communities and the people and the clients that they work for and with. And in fact, I think that before you can get to that place, you need to really understand yourself. In other words, you need to reach in. Then the world gives you lots of information. So we've talked about it, the externalities that allow you or force you to compare yourselves to others. Those are the moments of reset. In other words, is that information valid? Does it help me advance my cause? If so, how? Maybe I should recalibrate, reset a little bit. And then third, reach out, serve. Serve in the way you know how and you best feel you're able to contribute. And that will look different for every single person. But I don't know, I felt like that sort of 3-part framework helps me remember that what I do is always in service of someone else or something greater. And that makes me feel like, in my way, I'm contributing on a daily basis. So it can be a simple conversation with a teammate. It can be a team meeting. It can be achieving a goal. It can be solving a problem. It can show up in so many different ways. But first, understand yourself. Listen to the world around you. Don't ignore it. And then help others. When's
the book out, roughly?
April 2025.
April 25. Available in all good bookshops, is it?
I can't believe I'm going to say it, but
You're going to say it. I've had a quick read. I am reading it. It's well, I'm a person where a book needs to be well written, but, concise.
Yeah.
So I can just get straight into it.
Yeah.
And because it's a topic I'm naturally interested in, from what I've read, it's very well positioned for somebody just interested in leadership, or a bit deeper than that, wanting to know about yourself as well, because this is a culmination of your journey to date, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a few sort of personal stories thrown in. Hopefully there'll be something in it for folks who are either in a process of discovery of themselves or embarking on the process of what does leadership look like, or maybe just interested in a fun story and a gander through the science and the feelings that you can engender when you lead from a place of who you are.
Did you find it easy to write?
No.
No.
No, it was, I'm not naturally a writer by training or anything. So I struggled. I have this, my sister calls it a sort of rabbit technique, which I tend to jump from one thing to another because it makes total sense in my brain. But to anyone listening or reading, it can sometimes feel like completely random thoughts strung together in one sentence. So I've had to work really hard, and I don't know if I've achieved it yet, but through the copy editing phase, hopefully this will iron out some of the glitches. But basically, I've had to work really hard to outline my ideas, then write about my ideas, then edit my ideas, and then make sure they're coherent. I still don't know if I've gotten there, but it's been a really iterative process. I will say I highly recommend it. It's incredibly therapeutic because you said it when you said on Boxing Day, you sort of wrote down, you had to write it down. There's something about when you put it on paper, somehow it makes it real.
It's a physical form then.
Yeah.
It's got its own identity.
And you kind of have to commit. Now that I've told people, you better reach in, reset, reach out, I better be doing it.
Yeah.
And it's quite good. It holds me to account.
It does. It's that commitment piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when I did the vision, it was like, right, I'm now going to say this and this is where we're going. So yeah, it does. It becomes a physical reality of your imagination and your thoughts and your process.
Exactly.
It's a weird thing, isn't it?
It's really weird.
It's Harold and the Crayon.
It is a little bit like that. You're right.
It's amazing. So it's going to be out April 25.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's well worth a read. And I will be reading it.
Well, I'll send you a copy when I get the real thing, because that's quite exciting.
Sign it as well.
If you want.
Yeah, why not? I've got one final question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is my magic wand question. Okay. I ask everybody this, by the way. So my question to you is, if I gave you a magic wand and that magic wand could give you one wish, you could wish for anything apart from another wish. It's limited in its power.
Did someone say that? I want an infinite number of wishes. Okay.
It's like, okay. And the wand is branded BWD.
Okay. Well done.
What would you wish for and why?
It's hard to not answer this question with cheese, so I'm just going to answer it with cheese because that's who I am. I wish that every single person on this planet could achieve and do what they dream of doing. And I don't know how we do that. I actually don't physically know how we do that. But I believe it starts with each and every one of us. So if we had the power to do anything we dreamed of, I wish we could do it. And I think the world would be a little better as a result. We were focused on connecting together, making dreams come true, being a bit more creative. I think, we'd be filled with optimism and hope. And wouldn't that be such a cool thing? Such a cool place to live.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, that's my cheese.
Not cheese. Very good. Archana, thank you very much for joining me today on the In the Know podcast. It's been my pleasure to talk to you today. I found it hugely fascinating, and I'm sure other people will as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.